In the Lab, a Texans podcast that takes a different look at things. Drew Dougherty and John Harris have their lab coats and goggles on, and the Bunsen burners burning. Here's Drew.
Oh, hello. In the Lab time is now. Drew Dougherty and the waving John Harris. Goodness gracious, man. We're what, 9 days away from the draft? Single-digit days. I can't believe it. We got a lot going on in Houston Texans land. Heard last week from Nick Caserio, and Nick Caserio had a GM press conference, like every other Houston Texans GM press conference I've ever seen, for the most part, in which he was asked many, many questions, and he was very vague about what was coming up. Rick Smith did it. Bill O'Brien did it. I wasn't here before Rick Smith, but I'm sure Charlie Casserly, to a degree, did it. GMs don't say much this time of year. It's nothing new. It's going to continue on. And there's obviously a lot of questions surrounding the quarterback of the team. And, you know, we can't talk about that really because of what's going on, but he couldn't either. He didn't either. And it was very, very, I guess, par for the course. Wouldn't you say so? I went in with low expectations, you know, as far as getting a lot of information. Yeah. And you know, he's supposed to do that, don't you think? I mean, I kind of thought that was how it would go, and it did.
I think I would be a little bit disappointed if he had given us something, to be honest. Mm-hmm. I thought Scott Pioli told a great story. I don't know if you heard this story. He was on, I can't remember who, he was on somebody's podcast, and he was talking about Matt Light. You know, Scott Pioli used to be the Nick Caserio for the Patriots before Nick Caserio became Nick Caserio. Scott Pioli was that guy. And in 2001, I think it was 2001, the Patriots were interested in making Matt Light their second round pick. And I think they were at 51. So they called Light and they said, have you been talking to anybody? And he said, well, actually, I'm on the phone with the Jets right now. Well, the Jets had pick number 59 and the Patriots were 51. And Pioli was like, hang on. Told Belichick and the Patriots what was happening. They said, don't say anything about us calling you. And he was like, oh, okay, sure. The Patriots trade ahead of the Jets, draft their cornerstone left tackle who protected Tom Brady for, 10, 11 years or whatever it was. And away you go. And Pioli said it was one thing that we were able to do in New England that some of the teams can do, some of the teams can't. And that is, you got to hold your water. You can't just blurt out what you're going to do. You can't make an information mistake. And Nick Caserio, I'm sure, has been schooled very often. You cannot say anything in a press conference that doesn't get back to 31 other teams. Your scouts can't say anything on the road like, hey, yeah, man, we're looking at this super sleeper corner from Western Carolina. That's going to get out. Even your presence at pro days and at the combine, who you interview. I mean, think of all the people that in Houston cover the team say, oh, well, the Texans interviewed this particular rookie prospect. You and I both know that means diddly squat.
Yeah, but they've drafted many guys that they never talked to once. I can't remember which one because I'll tell you one. But they've taken first rounders who have been Kevin
Johnson.
Right.
Kevin Johnson, they met at, I asked Kevin about this. We actually talked about this on and off the air. Kevin said they met at the combine, had their 30-minute conversation or whatever it was at the combine. That was it. He said they didn't talk to him again. Mm-hmm. And that might have been why it was a little bit of a surprise why Kevin was the first round pick in 2015. There are certain spots in which, like if the Jaguars went and had dinner with Trevor Lawrence, it would just be news. If the 49ers went and had dinner with Trevor Lawrence, all of a sudden it would be, okay, what does that mean? So there are different, levels of all of this. But after the press conference was over, Nick joined Mark and I, and we had a 2-on-1, interview that we played last night on Texans All Access. And it was the same kind of thing. He gave us a little bit more, but nothing that you could go, oh, okay, that means they're drafting this or they're looking for this position. None of that.
That's his job. That's his job right now.
Exactly.
Evasive when talking to the public. You know, and hey, Rick Smith was the same way. The only things you knew you would get at that pre-draft press conference from Rick Smith were he would start out by saying, "I'm not going to give you guys anything." I mean, he made it a point to say that. And he was trying to be helpful and to be courteous by saying that. But then B, he always said with a smile, he's like, "Well, I used to be a defensive back, so I always like to take a corner or two in the draft," which many times he did. Sometimes he did not. But those were the only, and there are probably a few other things that I'm forgetting, but those were the two things with a Rick Smith press conference that you could bank on. And Caserio is kind of following those same sort of footsteps as, a lot of the good GMs have and do around the NFL.
There's nothing you're going to get from pre-draft interviews other than the media being able to ask the questions that they've been sitting on for a while. And obviously here lately, that's been the Deshaun question, but nobody in our building, no matter what they're doing in any way, shape or form, TV, radio, podcast, anything, can say anything about Deshaun. A, we don't really want to. B, we can't. And C, there isn't anything that we can speak on. Yeah. So we can't do it. And so to your point about Rick, which I always thought was funny, he would talk about drafting a corner. And once you have, sort of a trend that has been acknowledged not only by, the people in your city, the media in your city, your fans throughout the league, like, you talk to various people around the league, scouts and people that know people and all that. And you go, oh, well, such and such GM is drafting a lineman. They always draft linemen, or they're looking for this. I guarantee you around the league, everybody's like, oh yeah, Rick's drafting a corner. And Rick knew it. And so he's like, yeah, I'm going to draft a corner. Okay. And then he would, you just didn't know when. And that was obviously the biggest question that with Nick, we don't know. We don't know whether he really likes quarterbacks. Maybe he drafts two of them. I mean, maybe he doesn't like quarterbacks. Maybe he likes kickers. Maybe he drafts two of them. The point being, we don't know what sort of trends Nick is going to have in the draft, but GMs develop them. I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, just in watching Chris Ballard draft, he's going to draft some twitched up, athletic dudes on the offensive and defensive line at the linebacker positions. That's what he's looking for. And when it comes to, is he going to draft a 335 pound guard who's a little sloppy? No, he's going to probably draft a 305 rocked up athlete because that's been the trend. And he's acknowledged it. He knows that's just part of what the Colts are looking for. So there are trends that GMs fall into, just like there are coaches in play calling, just like there are players out on the field. For Rick, it was one thing. Nick, we'll find out. We'll find out what it is. And I love the fact that he just was like, look, I'm not telling you anything without even saying it. He didn't, he'd answer the question without answering the question. And that's what he is supposed to do.
Kind of a dance in futility.
Yes.
For both sides, but
yes,
it's something that happens. It's something you do every single year. All right. With that in mind, let's chit chat about defensive backs you like. Give me 3 total that you think are going to be around in the 67 range when the Texans are picking, that you think would be nice fits, not just for this team, but really nice fits anywhere at corner and safety. Who do you see?
Well, I think this corner class is very, very good. I think there are 4 guys that, to me, you could really, if they're all healthy, and that's the key, because one of them, the guy that would be number 1 on my board, and I bumped him down just because I actually had the same surgery he did. Now, I'm a lot older than he is, but it's taken me a while to come back from it. And I just don't know how quickly he's going to be able to get back. And that's Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech. He would be number 1 on my board. But the 4 are Caleb Farley, Patrick Surtain II, Greg Newsome II, and then maybe the most talented of the bunch is J.C. Horn. 2 NFL fathers with Patrick Surtain, all-pro corner, and then J.C. Horn, whose father, Joe Horn, was a wide receiver. Those 4 stand out. They're the cream. So they're in tier 1. I think those guys are all first-rounders. I think at the back end of the first round, you could, again, another NFL former player's son, Asante Samuel Jr. Now, I would love to see him available for us because, Asante Samuel Sr. was drafted by the New England Patriots. Yes. So there is obviously some recognition with Nick, and obviously Bill Belichick drafted him many, many years ago. Asante Samuel, a little smaller than his dad, but I went in thinking, okay, son of a former NFL player. Let's see. Boy, I came out of there really loving Asante Samuel Jr. Eric Stokes, Tyson Campbell, both from Georgia, I think could be there at 67, like both of them.
They've been
Campbell,
a little bit to the Texans by a few mock drafts.
Yes,
so.
Yes, I could see both. Either one of them would be, I think, a fantastic pick at 67. Let me give you one that I will be brutally honest. I love his brother, but his brother just didn't pan out. Now, his brother was a safety, and his brother actually played for the Patriots for a little bit. It just didn't come together, and I don't know why. But when I watch the younger brother, Ifeatu Melifonwu from Syracuse, the corner, when I went to the Senior Bowl, I was very intrigued by watching him at the Senior Bowl. And when I left the Senior Bowl, I was kind of confused. I was like, I can't figure out whether I really like him, because there's a tendency, for me to, when you've seen a younger brother, older brother, whatever, you see the older brother and you're like, why did that guy fail? I know they're brothers. They can be totally different, but a lot of times it's the other way. It's like, oh, that guy was a success. This guy's going to be a success. Mm-hmm. This brother was great. This brother's going to be great too. And it doesn't always happen that way. Well, Obi Melifonwu was a safety at UConn, was an athletic freakazoid. And I was like, that's got to translate. And then it just never came together. Find out, okay, why? And then you realize, he wasn't a guy that loved football, that loved everything that went with it, apparently. And you thought, okay, well, maybe his brothers wound the same way. And they're trying to play him at corner. And I'm like, man, big corners. We've seen Lonnie Johnson go from corner to safety. Like, man, you as a bigger corner, 205-pound, almost 6'3" corner, man, you got to be able to move. You got to be able to slide your feet and run. So I came back from the Senior Bowl and I put him up on my list to say, this is a guy you got to watch. Okay. So about 2 weeks ago, I'm getting near the end of my second revision. He's just staring me in the face. Ifeatu Melifonwu. Got to study him. I'm like, all right, got to study him. Okay, let's dive in. Flip on, go back and watch every single one-on-one Senior Bowl rep. And I remember the very first one I pull up and I'm like, whoa, those feet are fantastic. Then I pull up a couple of games and I'm watching him games. I'm watching him break on the ball and I'm watching him move. I'm watching him in one-on-one coverage. I'm watching him, break on the football from depth, play press, play off, play zone. And I'm like, man, I really like this guy. I ended up slotting him, I think, like 58, 59, which is about the spot maybe that Justin Reed, I had at 44, I think, and he ended up going to 67. Titus, I had at like 40 something. He ended up going to 23. You just never know with these things. But Ifeatu Melifonwu from out of Syracuse, I think at 67 would be a bang up pick. You got a few others after that. Robert Rochelle from Central Arkansas. I called a couple of games when he was freshman, Central Arkansas. Can absolutely fly. He is a freak, but technique's all over the place. He's got some growing to do. I think he's a guy to watch later rounds. And here's Aaron Robinson from UCF's not a guy I love like some other people, but he could play the nickel spot. He could play an outside zone corner. I think he could do that. Two other guys in the Harris 100, Marco Wilson from Florida. A lot of people remember for the cleat throw against LSU. He is wildly talented. If you can rein that in, he's going to end up being one whale of a player. And another guy that's kind of been off the radar screen just because of injury, COVID opt-out, whatever, is Paulson Adebo from Stanford. 6'1", almost 200 pounds, big, thick, strong corner. And he just hasn't played a ton of football because of opt-outs and because of injuries. So I think once you get to the Campbell, Stokes, Melifonwu area in that direction, I think you can end up finding a corner that makes a lot of sense at number 67 for sure.
Interesting indeed. All right. Go check out the Harris 100. Go check out on HoustonTexans.com also the success stories at 212, 203, 195, because there have been players taken in NFL history where the Texans are picking that have really come up big and done great things in their career. Like the latest one I did was pick 195 or 158, and Jay Novacek got taken by the St. Louis Cardinals.
Yeah.
85, 86, around 85, 86 draft. He had been, I don't know if you remember this, you probably do because you know everything, but at the University of Wyoming, he wasn't just a great football player for them. They ran the ball most of the time, but he was a good pass catcher. He was also a decathlete. And he had set school records in the decathlon there for Wyoming. So
that's crazy.
Started his career with the Cardinals, then was a Plan B free agent, which that whole thing.
I remember that.
Cowboys snapped him up in 1990. They had a losing season, but they made a jump from the 1-win season of 1989. And then from 91 through 95, they were playoff teams. They won 3 Super Bowls. They played in an NFC title game. Novacek was a big, big part of all that. He was a real, just safety outlet for Troy Aikman, who, as we all know, was a Hall of Famer.
One of the things that I've done, Drew, is I've gone through and I've taken the Harris 100. It's turned into Harris 250. I think I'm almost at 260 now. And I've probably got another 150 or so I could put in there, but I kind of stopped at 250 something because that's where the end of the draft is. And so you mentioned pick number 158. So if we went by just the Harris 100, pick number 67 would be safety from Indiana, ball hawk, Jamar Johnson from Indiana. I'd be very, very good with that. Our next pick is 109, correct?
Yep.
That pick would be an outside linebacker, Charles Snowden. Now, I don't think the Texans would take him because I do think he would end up being more 3-4 outside linebacker, but he could play a stack off-ball position, almost 6'7", 235 pounds. Very interesting player. Our next pick is 158, right?
Yep.
Harris 250 would say Isaiah McDuffie, linebacker from Boston College, who I think would be a great fit. He reminds me a little bit, actually, of KPL, Kevin Pierre-Louis, who the Texans already have. But out of Boston College, he's a whale of a player at will linebacker. You said 195. Is that another one of our picks?
Wait, you just threw me off there a second because I think we've missed one. It is 67, 109, 147, and then 158 from the Patriots, 195 from the Patriots. 203, that's from Miami. 212s from the Saints. 233 from Cincinnati. So the first 3 picks, round 3, round 4, round 5, those are the Texans' original picks. Everything from the 5th rounder from the Pats on through the 7th, all via trade with others' teams. So they dealt away theirs, and they've got their 3rd, their 4th, and their 5th, as well as they dealt away the 1st and 2nd. But that was back in the Laramie Tunsil, Kenny Stills deal. So,
you mentioned 147. This actually would be a really fun player I have ranked here, and that's Wyatt Hubert from out of K-State, defensive end, who is a house of fire. He's got some twitch, good pass rush moves. He is fun to watch. When I first saw him, I was like, that he's a tiny guy. Then you see him up close, and you're like, no, he's not tiny. He's almost 6'3", 265. And was one of the better pass rushers. Then I could see him playing in a R4-3, what Lovie Smith wants to run. He would be a really good fit. So pick 147. If it follows the Harris 250, Wyatt Hubert would end up being a pick at 147, which would be kind of fun.
House of Fire from Kansas State. That sounds like another guy who's a House of Fire from Kansas State that works in the building with us, and Gavin Garrett. So,
of course.
You can't have too many House of Fires from Kansas State.
Exactly.
G squared himself. But hey, John, always fun talking with you, and we'll do it again next week. It's going to be draft week then. Can't wait.
Oh, that'll be fun, man. Looking forward to it. Thank you, Drew.
All right. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to know when we post new content.